Hello, everybody, and welcome on inside the Browns beat here. It is Wednesday night, and we've got a great show for you. We're after the combine, but we're just before the league year starts. We're about ready to get free agency going. Trades are already in the news. Already plenty of rumors about guys getting cut around the league, and we're going to just dive into all of it as we get ready to see really what the Browns have, the plan that they have, and how it's going to unfold this offseason. Andrew Berry at the helm, new coach Todd Monken. We'll see how they attack this offseason. We'll talk about all that tonight. But before we do, we are brought to you here proudly on the OBR streaming network. So hold on one second. I got to scroll here. There we go. So you'll see the QR code pop up on your screen. Go ahead and scan that with your phone and get over to the OBR page. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you get subscribed. The OBR is Cleveland's oldest and largest independent Browns coverage site, and just one of the great communities on the internet at the OBR. So if you subscribe, not only do you get access to all of the written content from our amazing writers like my co-host here tonight, but you get to be a part of those communities, those message boards, and you get to talk Browns as much as you want. So get over to the OBR.com. Make sure you're subscribed to everything there. All right, joining you tonight, I'm your host, Michael Keefe. Joining me, my co-host, Fred Greetham. Fred, good to be back on the show. Good to see you. Getting ready for busy season in Brownsland, are we?
Yeah, I mean, they say it starts a week from today, but it really starts Monday at noon. And that's when everything breaks, I know it's legal tampering, but even they always move when it used to be no legal tampering, you still heard about everything before. So,
of course.
I mean, if you got in your calendar, free agency starts next Wednesday at 4, scratch it out and put Monday at noon, because that's when it starts. I mean, at 12:01, you'll hear the bigger names all have agreed to terms with teams. So we'll be all over it. Browns, as in Andrew Berry form, had a little preemptive, is that you can make trades. And he traded for an offensive tackle. I think it was Monday. And so that's what he has done in recent years, is maybe before free agency gets going. And to me, the trade route is a much better route for the Browns, because unless you're throwing the most money at somebody, you're probably not going to get them, especially at some of the premier positions, which in free agency, they all seem to get overpaid. Even guys that are like, you're kidding me, are getting paid big time money, in bidding wars, even wide receivers or whatever. So if you can trade, you can bring them without having to go through that whole process. Now, he's been good at identifying teams that were moving on from a young veteran, didn't want to pay him a big contract. He's chosen to extend Titus Howard, 3 years, $63 million. So that's a significant investment. We know Jack Duffin will have the numbers broken down on what it really means once it becomes official, because you can't do anything official until next Wednesday, a week from today at 4:00. But they're going to be active. I don't know what else they'll do, but I do expect the trade route, to be something they'll really explore, as well as free agency. Pinpoint maybe one or two people they really want to get and go for it. But I think more importantly, we've been speculating ever since Todd Monken came on board. What does he really think about the Browns quarterbacks that are on? They've said a lot of nice things about Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel and even Deshaun Watson. But Monday is when the proof will hit the pudding, proof is in the pudding, so to say, is that
we got it.
Even if they don't sign a Malik Willis or another free agent, or don't trade for one, you can bet it's going to get leaked out that they were going after, or they were in on, a quarterback. And so right now you're led to believe, hey, we're totally happy with the 3 we have. And this will tell us a lot. Are they really going to go with Shedeur Sanders? Are they really going to make it open? or are they dissatisfied? And you have to say what they're saying in case they don't come up with anybody else. So I'm interested to see really how they approach free agency overall, but especially with the quarterback, because we know that's the most important thing. And if they go in to get a veteran, that tells me that they're not really totally in rebuild mode because, you know, are you trying to win this year or are you trying to get a number one pick next year? Because if you get a quality quarterback and he plays well, whether he's on the team already or he's one of these free agents or trade possibilities, you know, you can, with the schedule you have, you could win enough games, take you out of that picture. And I think Todd Monken in his first shot at an NFL says, look, I'm playing to win. You know, he's seen what's happened here before, one and done coaches, and he doesn't want to, you know, be in a rebuilding process. So I'm kind of fascinated to see how they approach this. And we're going to start to know, are they going after wide receiver, offensive tackles, or whatever?
Well, listen, I think you, Fred, as we kind of unpack kind of all that you talked about there. I mean, I think let's go back to what you kind of started with, and let's go back to that trade for Titus Howard. The Browns send the 5th round pick to the Houston Texans. The Texans send Howard, and the Browns give him a 3-year extension, 3 years, $63 million. And my initial thought, because again, I think we live in this world where everybody reacts so big on the internet that it felt like there was this overwhelming need to talk about Titus Howard and how he's not like an elite tackle. And he's not. He's not like, it's not an elite level, Pro Bowl level tackle. But there are things, he's a pretty decent tackle. And he can shift to guard, and he's a versatile player. So that's number one. Number two, he is durable. I think there's only 1 year in his entire career that he missed any kind of significant amount of time. Otherwise, he is out there and playing. And three, and this, I think, especially on an offensive line, it holds true. You don't need to have, Fred, 5 Pro Bowl caliber offensive linemen in order to have a good offensive line. You need to have 5 pretty good offensive linemen who come together and play well together and all understand where they're supposed to be and when they're supposed to be there and when they should step in and cut off and when they should chip somebody and when they can move and trust that somebody behind them has their back. There is a lot more to it than just saying, hey, here's the big name guy, we got to go get him. And I think, Fred, starting with Howard, and again, from the looks of it, there's a shot, unless we hear something crazy about Joel Bitonio. There's a real chance there's 5 brand new starters on the Browns offensive line, and the first domino drops. And I think it says something about the approach. I think it says we're going to go try to find 5 good players, even if they're not the elite of the elite, but we're going to try to build an offensive line with 5 good players. And Titus Howard is the first one to drop. And I like the move. I think especially for everything they've dealt with over the past, Fred, 3 years? I think it's been 3 straight years of just decimated injuries on that offensive line. 2 for sure. So especially to get a guy that's going to be out there, and that's, I mean, he might be like a middle of the NFL type guy, but like he's there and he's pretty good. It's a good start for me.
The availability is key that you touched on. Jack Conklin couldn't stay on the field the last 2-3 years. DeJuan Jones hasn't been able to stay on the field the last 3 years. The Browns, I think were foolish to just assume DeJuan Jones was going to be ready to go and kind of handed him the left tackle job last year, and he played 4 or 5 games and again out for the season. Everything I've read and looked into Howard, he's a pretty good pass blocker. He's not the greatest run blocker. Okay, it's a start. He's available, so at least that's, you're not worrying about every week have to get a new guy. So they thought they had a swing guy in Cornelius Lucas. He had a very bad year. And you look, and a lot of people say, why are the Browns trading with the Texans offensive linemen? Their offensive line, they're looking to overhaul it. I mean, last year, Cam Robinson was kind of an emergency, and he played like he was emergency for the most part, but
Yeah.
he was a guy. But here you got Howard. And if I don't think that precludes you from getting another tackle, even another right tackle, if you look at it in the draft, because you said he could play guard. He's played right tackle and the two guards. So he's a guy that can, in fact, he's played like everywhere but center. So that to me is a good start. You got him as your default right tackle right now. But if you find somebody else, you can move him maybe to guard or whatever. And so I think that gives you some flexibility. You need bodies. You've already said you're not going to bring back the same crew. And I mean, we're sitting here Wednesday, March, 4th, and Joe Batonio hasn't let them know yet. I mean, that tells me, because today we met with the coordinators, and Travis Schweitzer said, whether he knew or not, but he had the same line as Monk, and we're giving him his space, and we're hoping he comes back and all this. So I remember Joe, the last time we talked, he said, I got to let the Browns know so they can make plans. And we're right here at the deadline. I mean, so I would still guess that he probably is not coming back, or he would have said something to him earlier, because they have to go get a guard or two, especially with Teller gone and if he's gone. So with what you're saying, you got to start somewhere, and everybody can say, well, let's get this guy. There's a reason they're available in most cases. That's why you draft, and you got to hit them in the draft. And that's where I think still your long-term answer could be in the draft this year at left tackle.
For sure.
The Jed Wills should be in the prime of his career now, like the 6th or 7th year at left tackle. Look at Tristan Wirfs, who was taken 3 picks later. He's been a 5 Pro Bowl player for the Buccaneers. They took the wrong guy. And that's what makes me leery about taking a right tackle from college and figuring they can move him to left tackle. From what
that
I
was
look
Tristan.
at,
That was Tristan Wirfs. That was the same.
well,
same
okay,
concept.
there's a success story. Because I was going to say Spencer Fano and Francis Mauigoa, everything I've read, they're mostly right tackles. And so I'm like, I don't know if you want to do that.
No, listen. If they're going to take a tackle, you take the best one, and you got to coach him, and you got to get him to play where he needs to play. And listen, that is, we do have a lot, I think, in Cleveland when it comes to. I don't want to harp on Jed Wills because it bums me out too, especially because it didn't work out for reasons that there's no way to see what happened with him coming, right? Like just the lack of drive and desire. It just was, you couldn't see it. But I also remember, and again, this is clear as day to me. It was on Cleveland radio. It was on 92.3 The Fan, where the Iowa Hawkeyes radio analyst called in because they wanted to talk about Tristan Wirfs, the show that he was on. And the Iowa Hawkeyes, I think his name's Gary Dolphin, maybe something like that. He came on and he said, I don't think Tristan can make the move from right tackle to left tackle. There was doubt about that. You had Andrew Thomas that everybody, I think I would have taken him, but he went off the board at, I think, 4th overall. And you went with Jed Wills because he was supposed to be good, and then he just wasn't. And sometimes that stuff happens. But, whatever it is in the draft, again, let's not forget about the name Monroe Freeling. I think he's going to be an option, maybe even at 6. But regardless, it just goes back to the point of, I think you see, and I think it goes to your next point that you made in your kind of opening statement there, Fred, of like, how are they going to operate? Andrew Berry came out and said, basically, that they don't expect to make like the world's largest splash in free agency, right? Like that was basically his message. But it doesn't mean they're not going to make a splash. And I think you saw it with, hey, we're going to give up a 5th round pick which again, the odds of hitting on a player in the 5th round are very small. We're going to give up a 5th round pick. We're going to get this guy. We're going to bring him in. I would imagine, and this will go to this. I'll put this comment up because I actually think it's like the 3rd or 4th show in a row that he's asked this. So I want to put it up and actually address it. Fumble said, he said over under 3.5 trades before the end of the draft. So what do we think? He's already at 1. My answer, Fumble, is I think it's going to be over. I think they will continue to find deals. I think Andrew Berry has been really good at this in his career, finding good players for picks that are not insanely valuable, right? Go to Amari Cooper for a 5th round pick. Hopefully this trade works out for another 5th round pick. But in my opinion, I think over is the way to go, because I don't think they're going to go out there and try to be the biggest spenders they can be in free agency. I think they're going to try to address things a little bit more in the trade market. What say you, Fred?
Well, I agree with that. You got to have a partner, but that's what he's been best at. I think you or I could have said Amari Cooper's a pretty good player. All we got to do is figure out how to pay him. And Andrew Berry's good at that. If you already have an established veteran like Titus Howard, he might be the best one available. He knows he might not be the greatest, but he's better than anything we have. And for the reasons we talked about earlier, I can handle the money stuff, or I should say Jimmy Haslam will. Andrew Berry has been able to use that money because they know how the salary cap with the restructuring to bail out of mistakes. He's done that at wide receiver. He's never really drafted any, that hit mostly because he's used 3rd round or lower. But you can say at wide receiver, Amari Cooper had a franchise record back-to-back 1,000-yard season here. Jerry Jeudy had that big year. We don't know what happened last year. The new offensive coordinator kind of bailed him out today and said it wasn't his fault. And so hopefully that's true. Elijah Moore might not have been the greatest, but he was serviceable. So wide receiver is where you can identify somebody. You need help here today. I go back to Travis Schweitzer today. I asked him about wide receiver room. He mentioned Jerry Jeudy. He didn't even mention Cedric Tillman's name, who started last year. The only other wide receiver he mentioned currently on the roster was at the end of the sentence. He said, and Bond. And he went right back to talking about Harold Fant and the tight ends. I go, well, he's a receiver, but he's not a wide receiver. So I think that leads you to believe they're going to be very active that direction. And I don't think you should rely totally on the draft. If you can make a trade, there's several pretty good wide receivers that are on the trade block. It's up to Andrew Berry to identify them and pull that magic, get a guy that another team doesn't want to pay for whatever reason, or get out of account or whatever it is. And you know what you're getting. And then you can add to the pile with a blue chip wide receiver in the draft. I don't want to rely on a rookie wide receiver, even if you take him number 6, to come right in and hit the ground running. They don't always do that. And so get somebody that can go into the pile. You need upgrade. You need at least 2 guys at the position. And so trade, I think good chance they would try acquire another offensive lineman in a trade and a wide receiver. I don't know where else, but 3.5, that would mean he needs 3 more. Yeah, I see that. I can see that coming by the draft, especially draft day. I mean, I can see him adding somebody or shipping somebody away.
Real quick before we go to the next thing, over on the Twitch stream, got to give a shout out to our buddy Pat Shea out there in California. 55 months in a row subscribed on the Twitch stream over there. Big shout out to Pat Shea. We love you. And all of you guys that are here in the comments, men and women that are enjoying the show and that support every week. We love you. And go ahead and keep the comments coming. I've got some things starred that I'll bring up. But again, if you've got other questions, if you got other topics you want us to hit on tonight, go ahead and put them in the comments and we will get to those as best we can. Fred, I think, oh, that's depressing. Pat Shea says, thanks. And still no quarterback. It's true. I think I the other thing I want to go to, and I think this is just that routine thing that we hit on pretty consistently here. But again, it bears addressing at this point. Is you also talked about strategy and what's the best thing for them to be doing. Are you trying to play for a top draft pick, or are you trying to compete? And there's, in my opinion, Fred, there's only one right answer. You're especially the way the roster is built. You brought up the word rebuild. Well, they can't possibly be in a rebuild because with the defense they have assembled on the roster, you can't rebuild. It is not a rebuildable thing. You already have literally a championship caliber defense on one side of the football. And so on the offensive side of the football, I think you hit the nail on the head with Todd Monken. He doesn't have time. He doesn't have time to mess around and say, hey, 5 years from now, let's see what happens. Because you're bad for 2 years, you're probably going to be gone. He's got to make an impact. This team has to make an impact. And again, it is all going to revolve around quarterback, and we're not going to have that solved right now. But I think the purpose going into this offseason, Fred, is to get this team as competitive as it can possibly be this year. Because again, the thing I hate about the conversation about playing for next year or whatever, playing for Arch Manning, you don't know Arch Manning's going to, you don't know which quarterbacks are going to be good, which aren't going to be good. Look at the quarterbacks that we were talking about going into last year. Drew Aller and Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik and these guys that we thought were all going to be first-round draft picks are all probably going to be third-day draft picks. Maybe Nussmeier goes earlier than that, but you don't know how things are going to shake out. You don't know who's going to be available. Take this year, for example. There's one good quarterback. There's one pretty surefire thing at the top of the draft, and that's it. So there's no time. There's no time to waste. There's no time to say we want the best draft pick next year. You go out and compete. And I think that's, in my opinion, Fred, I think that's what we're going to see out of the Cleveland Browns, out of Andrew Berry in building the roster this year. Is I think he made reference to the Chicago Bears flipping their offensive line in one offseason and how he wants to kind of take that and run with it this year. I think you're going to see them be, again, not hyper aggressive in giving out the biggest contracts out there, but I do think you're going to see them trying to build a competent offense that can go out and compete and win games this year. I don't think there's any other choice.
I agree. I mean, because like you said, you got those same good players in their prime on defense, and you got a young core on offense. So that leads me to believe, that's why I'm saying, what are you going to do at the quarterback? If you just say, well, we're going to see what we have in Shedeur, well, there might be a better option to win games out there. And it might not be a name that anybody wants to hear, like Kyler Murray or Geno Smith or, all these guys. There's several going to get cut or traded. And the free agents, about the only one's Malik Willis. If you hear that the Browns were, in on that, then you're going to know, okay, they are serious about moving on. But they can't say anything because what if they get turned down and they really come out of free agency really with the same three? Yeah, in the draft, you can pick who you want, but that's not going to be a serious starter candidate this year, I don't believe, unless they tell you they take a guy 6 overall that he's going to be, and I don't think that'll happen. So, yeah, that's why it's all going to start to unfold. They might not add anybody, but I'm kind of intrigued. If you look at the schedule next year, they only have 3 games against teams that had winning records, and if you had competent quarterback play, you could have won a lot more games this year. So is that Shedeur Sanders? I don't know. I mean, I told you, I think on this show last week, if they really don't have a plan for Deshaun Watson other than to let him compete, he might very well be the starting quarterback come opening day, because I've seen him practice in the summer. When he's not getting hit, he really looks good. And you got the offensive coordinator today, basically echoing what Monken said, is that, hey, we got to give him, his history, and what he used to be at a Pro Bowl level. Is it there? Can we unlock it? I don't think so. But that's why these moves, if you make a move, say you went out and you did go all in, you got Willis. Okay, it's over. He's your quarterback. He's, I don't know then what you're going to do with the rest of them. Make Watson the backup and move on from Sanders because you're saying, yeah, we don't have time to develop him or let him keep going. So we really don't know. Everybody's speculating what Monken really thinks about Watson or Sanders or Gabriel or whatever.
Yeah, and again, the quarterback thing, I love your point on if it doesn't matter where Malik Willis winds up. It sounds like Arizona is going all in for him, and obviously they're expected to cut Kyler Murray. But if the reports come out that the Browns were very much in on that conversation, it tells you something. But again, just in the offense in general, the quarterback, we'll see what they decide to do. But I think they're going to attack the rest of the offense, specifically the offensive line and the wide receivers, like they're going to compete this year. And I know it's so easy to roll your eyes and say, oh, the Browns, but I think that's going to be the plan of action for Andrew Berry. Let's build this thing in 1 year. Let's put better playmakers out here in 1 year and just have it an entirely better unit. And I think that's what they are going to do. And I think that's the approach. As far as quarterback, who knows, man? It just at this point, it is for me. The quarterback is really. I don't know how. Maybe everybody else wants to chime in on this too. You could chime in. It's the last thing I'm thinking about right now, Fred. I know that sounds weird because it's the most important position out there, but right now the choice is a bad quarterback draft, right? And again, we know that retread quarterbacks can be successful because one just won the Super Bowl, but a retread quarterback that we don't even know who's going to be, Kyler Murray's the guy that we know will be available. Is he gonna want to come here and play here or whatever? Do you think he's worth it? To me, the quarterback conversation right now isn't exciting to me. If it's Shedeur Sanders, fine. If they go sign Kyler Murray, I don't really care. That won't be the most exciting thing, but it won't make me mad either. If they find a way to pry Mac Jones away from the 49ers or Geno Smith, but none of that to me at this point there isn't an option for a guy where it's okay, that gets me really excited for what the Browns can do this year. So for me, the exciting thing about this offseason is all the other stuff that they have potential to fix. And then they can just find a way to fix the quarterback. It's the last thing that they need to fix. But I don't know, Fred. It just doesn't, that conversation just does not get me going at this point.
Well, I get it because you don't feel like there's really any solution. It's a Band-Aid. And anything you do, if you go out and bring somebody in to be the starter, you, in my opinion, have dismissed and given up on Shedeur Sanders. Sure. I don't think he's, it would do him any good to be the backup again this year. Maybe I'm wrong. And so that's why I do think, you go out and surround whoever with weapons. And that's why I say get a couple wide receivers. I'm talking about at least one top echelon wide receiver and overhaul the offensive line. And almost, if you go 2-15 or 3-14 with Shedeur Sanders, you're going to probably then draft another quarterback the next year and you drop them in to an offense that has everybody, kind of like you saw with Schlesinger and Graham, emerging offensive talent for a second year. And then you're in position to add a piece or two in free agency. That's what Barry said. Be hyper aggressive. They expect to be next year. So that's, if not, if you think you can win this year, the division, but you still, any way you do it, you got to get the playmakers and the offensive line. You started with Titus Howard. Let's add to it. Let's see what else you can get. And even if Joel Bitonio comes back, I think that would be great, and it'll give him a Band-Aid for a year, but you're still going to have to replace both guards. Whether you have him on the team in Zach Zinner or Tevin Jenkins, you re-sign him.
Well, if Bitonio comes back, that would just be one less thing they got to put focus and time on. It'd be great. But I don't know. And listen,
Well, I'll
it's
say this. I've been every year I do a 5 steps to get the Browns back to winning football or the playoffs.
Do they ever listen to you?
You know, they don't. But 2 years ago, I really hit on. They did. I mean, I did it credit. They got players I put in there. Last year, they didn't listen to me at all. I had wide receivers the number 2. They didn't even address wide receiver in the free agency or draft and offensive line. But number 5's coming out tomorrow, and I'll have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So check that out on the OBR. But I've got what they need to do if it was up to me, and I don't know all the things they know, but as far as free agency and drafts and trades and so forth. So that will be in next week. It'll all been out, and we'll see what they have done. But yeah, generally they don't think the same way I do.
A couple other just questions. Now, this report came out, and some of the reports, Fred, that really make me feel like I have to put my phone down are the ones that say, report the Cleveland Browns have checked on the availability of so-and-so or so-and-so. Like that, I'm going to hope they're checking on the availability of everybody. Like I'm going to hope the Browns are calling the Minnesota Vikings and being like, hey, what's Justin Jefferson's availability? I'm going to hope they're calling Dallas and asking about, they're not available. These players aren't available, but I'm hoping they're asking about everybody. So when those reports come out and say, well, the Browns are asking about the availability of these guys, I'm like, okay, I'm hoping they're calling everybody. But
that is their job.
Yeah, right. But the report came out, I think it was this last week. And so we got a question here about Marvin Harrison Jr., but I believe the report was that the Browns are calling to check on the availability of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Chris Olave. So, Fred, do you have any insight on this?
No, I mean, again, these are people like me, writers that have to, there's a lot of course, we're factual and stuff, but there's some that just kind of throw out, would-be's, and some sites are based on clicks to get people to look, and there really might not be any more substance than somebody hears me on a show saying, hey, it'd be great if you could get Marvin Harrison, and then they run with it like that's a source or something.
Right.
that is say Browns Insider or whatever. But no, I would think you should be checking on all of them. I don't know why the Cardinals would be giving up on somebody on their rookie contract, when it's usually when I don't think he's already to the point of a contract year or whatever. But, that's when you do those type of things. It's like how they got Titus Howard. He's only 29, but he's going into the last year of his contract, and they knew that they weren't going to re-sign him and give him a big extension. It's much cheaper to draft somebody. And so that's what Andrew Berry's job is to scour these teams that have wide receivers that are pretty good or they have potential, but they already get the vibe that they're underperforming and they're not going to sign them long-term, but they see potential there. It's guys like Brian Thomas. He was a first-round pick, and they went and got, with the trade with the Browns last year, they got Travis Hunter. And so maybe there was reports they were going to move on from a guy like that. And so that's what they need to be, scouring. And if Marvin Harrison was available and it wasn't, out of this world price, why wouldn't you want somebody like that?
Listen, if he was available, I would pay a pretty darn high price for Marvin Harrison Jr. or Chris Olave. I just think, no offense to anybody. I like the Buckeyes. I'm not the most rabid. of Buckeyes fans, but I like the Buckeyes. I think it's a bit of an Ohio State pipe dream to put that in one tweet and say, the Browns are checking on the availability of Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison. I can't for the life of me figure out why either one of those teams would make a move. Again, we're talking about the Cardinals potentially getting ready. They're potentially cutting Kyler Murray. That's the result or the report. And they're reportedly preparing to give what's-his-face from Green Bay a $30 million contract. So that's not – you're not going to try to slash wide receivers at that point. And look at the season Chris Olave just had in New Orleans. He was unbelievable last year. And look at the way they kind of finished their year. They're feeling pretty darn good about themselves and their future in New Orleans. I have no idea why New Orleans would, in any way, shape, or form, entertain an offer. I don't know why either one of those teams would do it. So in my opinion, the answer to that question is, sure, it'd be fun. I would make a move for either one of those guys. I just can't imagine why the teams that they're on would make those moves. It does not make a lot of sense. So, yeah, good question. I'm not sure why they would do that. Fred, we did get a draft question earlier, and so this came from Fumble Again. So, Fred, here's the question. If Kansas City really wants Jeremiah Love and he's there at 6, would you trade the 6th pick and the 70th pick, so the third rounder, for the 9th pick and the 29th pick? So you add another first rounder, you come back 3 spots, and you give up your third rounder. Are you making that trade, Fred?
You're getting 9 and 29.
9 and 29.
Wow.
Yep.
I don't know. I read some report from ESPN, their grade guy, said that he only had 11 first round grades on the players in this draft. Last year he had like 18. There's 32 picks, and most of the time, by most of the draft experts, they don't even have 30 first round people. I don't know. It just depends on who you have a chance to still get. You hate to, I get the idea of quantity and so forth, but you mentioned earlier Monroe Freeling. To me already, he looks very viable at even 6 because he's 6'7", Georgia left tackle, and was a freak at the combine, and is only going to move way up in the draft, So I don't know if he'll make it to 24. I don't know if he'd make it to 9. In the same way with those wide receivers. I think you got to get a blue chip wide receiver with that first pick if you're not sold that the tackle is everything you want. So I don't know. I haven't looked at it enough to see. It's only moving 3 spots, so that's intriguing to get that 29 pick because you do. I think those up to 70 picks, I was planning on even using 3 out of the 4 on offensive linemen if they don't come out of free agency with a trade or a starting, at least 1 or 2 starting. So I'd have to think about it a little bit, but yeah, I guess if I lose out on a wide receiver, meaning Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson, I'd think twice. But if you could guarantee me I'd get either one of them or the best tackle, I'd maybe
you're
go
going to
with
get. Listen, if you're at 9, you're going to get one of those 5 players. If you're not, those 5 players aren't all coming off the board in the top 9. If you're 9, you're going to get one of those. I will answer this question. I'm making this trade tonight. Can I make this trade tonight? Can I add another? Listen, you brought up the article, and those things drive me so crazy before the draft. Like, I only have 10 first round grades. Well, you know what? It's easy for a writer to do that because as a writer that does this draft stuff, if you say a guy's a first round pick and he doesn't wind up being very good, then you look like you have egg on your face. You're like, well, you thought this guy was going to be good. But if you just say nobody's going to be any good, and then they wind up being good, it's like, wow, what a surprise. Oh, man, he turned out to be a great surprise. And you don't have egg on your face. To act like there's only 10 players or 11 players or whatever with first round grades in this draft is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's probably 50 players in this draft that are going to wind up being first round type talents. You're just going to find them in the second, third, fourth rounds. And some teams are going to get lucky there. But no, listen, this trade, I'm making it immediately. The only reason I don't make this trade is if there is a player that I am so sure is going to be franchise altering available at 6 that I don't think it's worth risking not getting him at 9. You know what I mean? Like if you are absolutely sold that Spencer Fano is 100% left tackle for the next 3 contracts. He is well, maybe not Joe Thomas level good. Let's not go that far. But he is your steady as a rock left tackle and you don't have to think about it again for a dozen years. Well, then, yeah, I'm probably not going to risk the fact that I may not get him then at 9 if he's available at 6. Otherwise, though, if I think he's going to be a good player, or Maungo is going to be good, or if those guys are still there, and I think I'll risk it. I'll find a good player at 9, and I will add another pick, 3 first-round draft picks. I will do that all day, because the odds of me getting a really impactful player for my franchise at 29 are just so much greater than getting him at 70. So much greater.
Yeah, and I would think you could use some of your assets, I guess being greedy, to still try to trade the 70 or whatever and other picks to get up to 29, as well. But it is kind of intriguing. And I think I've been on record to say that I think the odds are probably better than not that they trade down, just because of the success they had last year. Just by moving the 3 spots, you lost out on Hunter, who could be one of those guys you were talking about, a generational player. But you did get, 3 contributors, 2, starters, and Mason Graham, long-term starter, Quinshon Judkins, and Dylan Sampson probably will be a big contributor. And then you have that first-round pick this year at 24 who you think should be a starter. So, they say, man, if we could get 2 or 3 extra blue chip players, for moving down a couple, why wouldn't we? But you do risk missing out on the whoever you think's the best wide receiver or the best offensive tackle or, the generational talent like we talked about last night, if it was Caleb Downs or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's the only way I say no to that deal. And Phil in the comments says, yeah, but does Kansas City even make that trade? I'm going to tell you again, people get crazy and even general managers do. And I would not surprise me in the slightest. I think some team is going to just absolutely fall in love with Jeremiah Love. And does that mean they're willing to say, hey, yeah, we'll give you our 29th for your 70th if that means we can get this guy Jeremiah Love. You talk about a guy that smashed it at the combine, and that's not my favorite event on the planet. I started seeing it again, and I had to turn off my brain about the combine. I started seeing people talking about 3 days earlier. They were talking about guys like they were can't miss prospects, and then their arm length came back an eighth of an inch shorter than what they thought it was going to, and then it was well, I don't know about that guy. I'm what are we even doing here? What are we doing? But yeah, somebody will get desperate and make a move. And again, I think Andrew Bear is pretty good at capitalizing on that. Fred, you talked about today that you talked to, you had a chance to catch up and talk to the coordinators. So again, a ton of new faces in the coaching room for the Cleveland Browns. What else did you learn as you heard from the coordinators today? What stood out to you?
A ton of new faces is right. 29 assistants. Do you guys... You old timers, Blanton Collier was pretty good. He had 5 assistants. Monken has 29 counting him, and that's not counting the strength and conditioning. They didn't have them on there. But anyway, we talked to Travis Schweitzer. It's Schweitzer, not Switzer. I think I might have pronounced it wrong. But he played at Akron. He's very familiar with Northeast Ohio. He's giddy to be here and have this chance. He was a little, he's really followed the Todd Monken answers on most everything, whatever Todd said at the combine or whatever about the quarterback room. You get excited when that's one of the reasons you take the job, because of the pieces. One thing that I think I already said, is that when I asked him about wide receiver room, he only mentioned Jerry Jeudy. And in passing, he said Bond. He didn't even use his first name, but he didn't mention Tillman or any other of the receivers. He just talked about the first one he talked about was Harold Fannin. And he talked about Judkins and Sampson in the running back room. But all the way around with the quarterbacks, he said the same thing, like Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. And then he threw in Dylan Gabriel, that, they're all going to get their chance and so forth. I thought, you can't argue with the success they had, but I do think you got to remember that Todd Monken's going to be the de facto offensive coordinator, because he's brought here to call plays, to help design the offense and bring in. And Schweitzer has been hooked at the hip with Monken, so he thinks everything the same way that Monken does. The one I was really impressed with was Rutenberg, the defensive coordinator. That guy's a ball of fire. What you were reading about him is true, man. He was excited. I can see he has a very infectious personality. He was asked about, stepping into Schwartz's shoes. He said everything right. He just said that it's all about relationships and getting to know these players and their families and their likes. They're just, and he doesn't expect just to walk in and say, hey, I'm the defensive coordinator now, bow down to me. He really wants to earn their trust, and that's how it should be. But I mean, he went around the media room and shook hands with everybody in the room, introduced himself. He left after the press conference, and these are just little things, but he came back in a couple minutes later and he said, I apologize. I forgot he was talking about all the coaches, and he left one out. And he said, it just dawned on me I didn't mention him. And he went on and on about that coach. But then somebody, as he's leaving, said, do you know who's even on the roster? He listed the entire defensive roster. He forgot one guy. And he's, we'll see what they do in the field. But you had to love the soundbite, if you'll watch it, is we're going to be aggressive. We're not about scheme. We're about style. We're going to attack. It all starts out up front with the defensive. He sounded like a younger Jim Schwartz, as far as saying the same things that Schwartz did when he first came. So far, I mean, he was the epitome of winning the press conference, if you would. I know that doesn't mean anything, but
we're so good.
I would have run through the wall for him if I was on the team, and I think he's going to win these guys over, as far as believing in what he is saying and doing. And so very infectious personality. The special teams coordinator, Byron Storer, first time, he was like a historian. He was listing off a lot of the players on the special teams that he's already been impressed with. And so, I mean, they're all first time coordinators, so it's going to be a learning curve. But I mean, I think Rutenberg, I think he's the real deal. He's going to have to do it, but he's got the horses. You could tell he's downright excited. Well, all of them are very excited for the opportunity. So the biggest thing I took away from the defensive coordinator, Rutenberg, is that, the attack style, and keep that. It's all about the defensive front. and keep that going. On offense, about adapting. That's what Monken said since he's been there. We'll see what we end up with, and we'll adapt to what we have on the line, in the wide receivers, whatever, quarterback room, and all the way around, And the special teams coordinator said punt coverage is his most important because, it's kind of in the weeds a little bit, but it can be about a 12-yard difference in field position. So that was interesting to hear that after seeing so many returns against the Browns this year. So
12-yard difference. You get a stop. That's like it's a touchdown off the board compared to what they did last year. All right, Fred. Just a quick last thing. Just talk about what the Browns. They did make an announcement today. I know it's not a big news thing or anything, but just talk about what they did. They did their exclusive rights tendering today. And I think it was 6 players. It was Brendan Bates, the tight end. It was Andre Schmidt, the kicker. It was long snapper Rex Unhara, Winston Reed, Jamari Thrash, and Malachi Corley. So just talk about what that means for the Browns and for those 6 players.
What that means is those are guys that aren't tenured, meaning that if they just exercise the right, they get the league minimum. And they're under the Browns' control. That doesn't mean they make the team. It just means they can't go anywhere. If they didn't exercise that right or sign them to the tender on Monday, they become a free agent and they can go wherever they want. So there's enough in them that they want to keep them. In fact, there was only 7 available. The 7th one was the kid from Baldwin Wallace who was on injury reserve last year. Kendall, I think is his name. Cornerback. They didn't tender him.
Yes.
But yeah, I just think that's kind of a procedural move. The more interesting is restricted free agents. Are you going to tender Ronnie Hickman, and at what level? Are you going to, what other one? He's the most prominent one, I think, comes to mind. What are you going to do with Devin Bush? What are you going to do with Martin Emerson? I mean, to me, Devin Bush is your, he reemerged and was the number 10 pick in the draft that the Steelers traded up for last year. And now with the news of JOK, I think he's a top priority because I think he's the 11th starter. They have 10 of the 11 are under contract. He's the only defensive starter not under contract. So I think he's a high priority. And then Emerson, depth-wise, or you always need the corners unless you have to read tomorrow what I have to say about it. And my 5th step to get back to winning football.
Yeah, read it tomorrow for the OBR. 5 steps. All right, Fred. We're going to cut it just a couple minutes early here on this episode tonight, but a lot of good stuff. And again, give everybody a reminder because you said this earlier in the show. I want everybody to hear it again from you, Fred. I know the league will officially tell you when the league year opens, but when should people set their clocks for really starting to get the news rolling in?
Eastern time, noon on Monday, because that's when the league legal tampering opens up. A few years ago, I always wrote Wednesday at 4:00, and I was asleep at the wheel. I'd schedule something else, and what do you mean they just signed Conklin? What do you mean they just, everything was coming out, at noon or shortly after. Most deals they've been talking with the agents and so forth, even though this is the legal tampering. They've been laying the groundwork, at the combine and things like that. So I expect movement. Now, last year, the Browns' biggest move was Malik Collins, and he technically wasn't a free agent to begin with. He was released as a salary cap casualty, and they jumped on him quickly, and he was their best move. So I think they might make another trade or make them, ahead of time if you can. That just takes away some of the leverage that agents have in bidding when it goes to free agency. They say, well, we just were offered this. What do you give us? And then you get in this bidding war, and pretty quick if you're out of the running because you're going to hear contracts are agreed to right off the bat. So, Yeah, Monday about noon. We'll be all over it. So follow us if you got to be at work or somewhere else at Fred
These
Greetham
dang
9
jobs.
or here at the OBR.
All right, let's get out of here, Fred. Just a couple things before we do. Again, shameless plug. Come back. You got an hour and 5 minutes. Come back for Garage Beers at 9 o'clock. We got a great guest, Danny Cunningham, that covers the Cavaliers. Finally, it's a Wednesday night. The Cavs don't have a game. So we're going to talk with Danny Cunningham about the Cavs. Plus, we'll dive more into the Browns, the NFL. We'll talk about the Blue Jackets and the Guardians. There's a lot of stuff coming out of spring training that's pretty interesting on the Guardians. So we'll kind of dive into all that tonight. That's episode 304 of Garage Beer. So go take an hour, grab your beer, get right back here on the OBR streaming network. Our last order of business here is to just give out our thank yous. First, big thank you to the OBR. Again, scan that QR code with your phone, get over there and hit subscribe so you can be a part of Cleveland's oldest, largest independent Browns coverage site. That's the OBR. Big thank you to them for hosting us here on the streaming network. Number two, big, humongous thank you to everybody that joined us live here. The comments were great, as always. We always appreciate your support. It is unbelievable that you guys show up week in and week out. So love you. Appreciate you for doing that. Again, special shout out. We saw Pat Shea's 55 months in a row. That is incredible. So shout out to Pat Shea one more time for that level of loyalty. But that's going to do it for us. For Fred Greetham, go follow him online at Fred Greetham 9. I'm Michael Keefe. Follow me at Garage Beers Mike. I'll see you again in an hour. Fred, I'll see you next week. But until then, this has been Inside the Browns Beat. Go Browns, everybody.